Well said. So you've done this with us a couple of times, I think, right?
Technical difficulties. Oh, there you are.
Yeah. Why don't you go ahead and we're recording this, for people who don't know who you are and
Okay.
don't know the contours of the district, especially now that they've changed. So if you just tell us, Jeff Helfrich, District 52, Republican, just give us a brief bio and then we'll have a few questions from there.
Okay, thanks. Hi, my name is Jeff Helfrich. I'm the former state representative for House District 52. I was in office from 2017 to 2019. The district's changed a little bit. It has changed. They've taken, basically, if you start at the east end of the Dallas city limits, travel downriver to the Columbia to the Sandy River, and then head south along the Sandy River. The district then shoots off into parts of Gresham, and then it goes to Highway 26, then comes back up and around Estacada Boring, goes on the outskirts of the city proper of Sandy, and then shoots back towards the Wasco County and Clackamas County lines, travels down the line between Clackamas and Wasco, and then eventually turns into Hood River, and then it cuts across behind Mosier, and then catches up across Government Flats, and then into the city of the Dalles, catches the outside, and then into the city of the Dalles.
So what did you give up? That sounds like the old district. Sounds very similar to the old district.
The city of Sandy is gone.
Okay.
The actual city, the city proper of Sandy is out of the district.
So we can't hold you responsible for Stan Pulliam.
No, you cannot.
Okay. All right. Great.
One quick question on that. Is Corbett still in there?
Yes, it is. So everything east of the Sandy River, I guess maybe I could have articulated that a little bit.
Yeah. So the gorge all the way to Hood River is.
Yep.
Is in.
Yeah, basically it just picks up the Dalles and then back into takes out Sandy.
And how does that change? How does the voter reg look differently? I haven't looked at the numbers since the district was regional.
I think it was a plus 5D in the old district. It's right around a plus 7.1, 7.2. The latest numbers I saw. I'm not quite sure where that's at.
Okay.
I think those numbers are going to change here when it comes time to file for registration, whether how you want to file as non-affiliated Democrat, Republican, or independent.
Mm-hmm. So if you wouldn't mind, just go over your bio briefly, where you grew up, what you did for a living before, what you're doing for a living now.
Okay, so I grew up in Colorado, Nebraska, worked on my family farm and ranch when we had the school I went to had year-round school. So I spent a lot of the time, the 2 months that I had off was with my grandparents, and then I was back for 4 months for school back in Colorado. Joined the Air Force, went through the Security Police Law Enforcement Canine program, became a law enforcement canine handler, got to do some really neat stuff in the Air Force, got to meet Bob Hope when I was in the first Gulf War, spent time in Honduras. From that, I knew I wanted to be a police officer, and kind of looked at the approach globally where I'd like to work at, because I was at Fairchild. When I got out, applied locally here in the Portland metro area and some other agencies, went back home thinking I'd work there, got a phone call from Portland, said, hey, we'd like to give you an interview and talk to you a little bit more, and eventually got a job offer about 9 months later, and planted roots here in Oregon again, or actually in the Pacific Northwest again. So from that, worked 26 years, roughly 26 years in law enforcement, 25 and some change with the Portland Police Bureau, mountain bikes, mounted patrol unit, in charge of our sergeant in charge of our personnel division, did the recruiting. Just got to do some really variety of neat things. Every couple of years changing and doing something different. And it was good.
And then did you go to MCSO for a brief period after that?
Yes, I retired from MCSO, went to the sheriff's office for a couple of months, and then I guess backtrack a little bit. While I was working for Portland, I met my wife. We moved to Cascade Locks. From there, got involved in the small town community there and asked to be on budget committee. Then went on to being a planning commissioner. From there, eventually city council, and then MCED, Mid-Columbia Economic Development District, which is a 5-county area that creates economic development opportunities within the scenic area. Really understood the balances of how city government works and how wealth is created in a community by having businesses there, and what it takes to have a business there, and what government should be doing. Eventually, we moved to Hood River. I stepped down from that, and then Mark Johnson stepped away from the state representative position. I was asked if I'd be interested in that, went through the process, was unanimously appointed to the House District 52 rep. I went there for the short session, got a couple bills passed, then lost. And then now I work at our local Hood River Airport. I've always had a love for aviation and get to go hang out with airplanes and do some fun stuff up there. So
What do you do at the airport?
I work for a company. It's called Hood Tech Aero. They're an innovative company. They they fly cameras on aircraft instead of UAVs. They use regular manned aircraft. And like last year, we flew most of the fires in Northwest Washington and Southern Oregon. We have a sensor that can map the fires at night. So it's pretty interesting. You're flying at, anywhere from 15 to 23,000 feet in the air, and you're watching the fires down below you, and you're mapping it at the same time in real time. And it's pretty ominous, and you can see the destruction when we don't manage our forces correctly.
Yeah. So you missed the legislature, obviously. What made you want to come back?
I think it was unfinished business. I think we look at Salem, and I think everybody can kind of agree, if you're looking at the policies that the supermajority had, it doesn't fit all of Oregon. And I want to be that reasonable voice in Salem. It's like when I showed up to somebody's doorstep as a police officer, there was a problem. How did we fix it? And then we agree to fix it and then move on. And I took that same approach in Salem, and I got some bills passed in doing that. But I think you're missing that ability to have some common sense conversations about stuff. We can't get mad and angry and stomp away. Let's sit down and have a rational conversation. And that's why I want to get back to it. I have something to offer, and I want to continue that service.
What issue, obviously we know your law enforcement background and now you're doing something different, but I'm curious, if you were to win this seat, what would you want to come back, and what issue is most compelling to you right now?
Everybody looks at me as my law enforcement background is my go-to thing, and it could be, but I really like economic development opportunities because I want to work for the people and get businesses here. So I want to create good family wage jobs. And if we're able to do that, the community then grows with that. And we don't have to raise taxes, but you spread that, instead of compressing taxes by just hitting certain groups, you spread that out over a broader spectrum, and we're able to grab more revenue and create those opportunities for other businesses. And one of the things that Senator Thompson and myself did, we championed the opportunity zones within Cascade Locks in the city in Hood River County. And that made a big difference. And some people didn't like those opportunity zones. They just wanted to tax people on the sale of their company, on the gross sale of their company. And it's like, well, if they're able to reinvest it and defer those taxes later on, that's a good thing. That brings people in here and want to create jobs for us.
So tell us a little bit more about those opportunity zones. So were those carve-outs from the Student Success Act, or were they more like?
Those were carve-outs at the federal level. Those were 2017, the tax there.
Yeah.
What Senator Thompson and myself had to do is we had to lobby not only the Oregon governor, Kate Brown, but also Inslee in Washington state to create, because the census tract lines were skewed a little bit for Cascade Lock, because they were the census tract lines that were going through Hood River captured a larger income base than was actually in Cascade Lock. So we had to switch that over so it was into Skamania County.
So I'm familiar with the new brewery in Cascade Locks.
Which one?
The big one is right on the main drag. It's got a beautiful new building. I forget, is that Thunder Island, or is that?
There's Thunder Island and there's Gorgeous Brews. Let's roll back a little bit to Thunder Island. Dave and Caroline, good people. They came in when I was on city council with Lance Masters, kind of asked, like, how could the city government help us start this brewery? And they kind of asked for some money. I'm like, well, that's not really our job to do that, but how could we help them? We created an opportunity with the Port of Cascade Locks in the city and created incubator space. And they took that small space, expanded it when it was down along Thunder Island itself, and they created, again, a great product, great food, great views, and that just helped build their base and going forward. And it's been really neat to watch that community grow and thrive around that brewery. And then another one was Brigham Fish Market too, that they put in.
So what other, the opportunity zones that you and Senator Thompson created, what other development has arisen out of those zones?
We got funding, and the help of the funding was for some of the flex buildings that Cascade Locks had. And then they're still trying to figure out what they want to do with some of the land here in Hood River, how to develop it. But the big project right now is locally Hood River is the bridge. How are we going to fund the bridge? And how is that, it's going to come federal level, 2 states going to pay for it, all those things in the Hood River.
That bridge terrifies me. I was on it last weekend. I love going to that little bakery in White Salmon. No offense to the bakeries in Hood River, but
you're up on top. That's good.
So is the plan to make that a four-lane bridge, or what's the plan?
I think they'd like to make it a 4-lane bridge, but it's more, can they make it a wide 2-lane bridge with walking on each side and bikes? They've got the different discussions, but it really boils down to what dollars are available to do that.
So you're in the unusual position of having been in, then out, and it wasn't long ago that you were in the building in the Capitol. That is, I'm wondering what the biggest lesson you took away from your couple of years there. I
think what I didn't understand, when a bill would reach the floor, it was going to pass. That's what I was told. Oh, the bill's going to pass. Then I remember sitting back and watching, and Bill like, it's not going to pass. There's not enough. They don't have enough votes. The Democrats didn't have enough votes to pass a bill. Well, before the third gavel hit, they came in, grabbed people out of committee or wherever, and had a conversation with the speaker's office. And I watched some people with some distraught looks on their face, and came back in, and the bill passed. And that
So
strong
what
arm
did they-
tactic is that strong arm tactic is probably what I was really surprised about. Because I remember talking to one of my colleagues that was a Democrat. I'm like, what's going on with this? She goes, Jeff, you just don't understand. They'll do this, this, and this, and not give away who I was talking with, but it's bad if we don't vote the way they want us to vote. I'm like, are you kidding me? What happened to being free and able to do stuff? Because it doesn't work that way sometimes. Like, okay. And for Mike McLean, when he was leader, he came to me first day when I was in office. He goes, Jeff, I'm never going to tell you how to vote. If we do ask you to hold your vote, just tell me what your vote's going to be, but may not publicize it. That's all I ask. Vote your conscience, vote what's good for the district, and do what you need to do for you and your vote. All right, thanks, boss, and I appreciated it.
So what was your takeaway from that? I mean, what does that all tell you?
What that tells me, there's a lot of influence, and people have, if you want to keep your post or you keep your chair, you better step in line sometimes. And I look at Jeff Barker, specifically when I talked with Jeff, and he talked about how they were trying to get away with do away with Measure 11, and he's like, no, it was a vote of the people. We can't be touching that. And then all of a sudden, he loses his gavel. He's no longer in charge of judiciary, and then they push that through.
Yeah, was he your union leader when you were a young officer? He probably
Yes, he was. Yeah, we worked together in the bureau, and then it was kind of funny working with Jeff. Is like we talk on the elevator going up into the Capitol, but all of a sudden once we hit the second floor, it's like, oh, see you later. And he goes on his way. Can't be seen with Jeff, and it was rather entertaining.
Yeah. So you're running in a district that's pretty moderate. It's pretty balanced. You said earlier maybe a 7-point D advantage, but it's a district a Republican could definitely win. I'm
Yes.
curious. When you and we're talking about a primary now, obviously, but you're probably looking ahead to the general a little bit. When you go door to door in the district, and you may knock on a Democrat's door or an NAV's door, and they say to you, gee, Jeff, how are you different from a party line Republican? You know, what do you and I have in common? What do you say to them?
It's just about talking to people and seeing where they understand, and then where they it's more like finding where you're able to find common ground. I mean, there are certain issues that are non-starters for me, but there's certain issues we can have a great conversation about and figure out how we can work together. And I explained to them how the bills that I used and I got passed, both of them unanimously, and give them examples of stuff, and said, for me as a police officer, it didn't matter what was going on. I just want to fix this problem. And they're like, I appreciate that. And just have an honest conversation with them and not try to tell them what they want, tell them what they're asking, and give them an honest answer.
What were the two bills that you've referred to that you passed?
The Eagle Creek Fire Recovery, 4145, I believe it was. And then, I can't remember the other one. The other one was a teacher's, basically it's a survey that we're able to do how teachers were staying in certain districts, how they recruited, mentor them, and kept them in certain districts, and why other districts were losing them, and going to implement that statewide, those practices. But an education bill and the fire recovery bill for Eagle Creek.
Okay.
And those are, to be real honest, I mean, if I never make it back to Salem, and I plan on getting back there, but those are two things I'm really proud of being able to do, and can show my children, if you work hard, you want to do the right things for the right reasons, you can be successful. And to me, that was a great success to watch those get signed into law. And it's like, we did that as a team.
Yeah. So I'm wondering if you could tell us about a mistake that you made in your career, either professionally or in Salem as a legislator, a material mistake that was significant to you and that you learned from, and that would make you, has made you better since then.
I think just how I talk and approach to people, because I remember having a senior officer, hey, Sarge, got a question for you. You said this in this debrief, and that really rankled some people. What do you mean? And it was, how do you learn from something? Or what would we do right and what would we do wrong? And you made us feel like we did something wrong, where it's like, what could we improve upon? It's like, and so I meant that what I took away from that, words matter, and how you go about explaining yourself matters. And every time I did that, I really sat back and would go, all right, how do we make a better improvement here? What did we do really well, but what do we need to think we do differently later on? And just those little nuances of wording and stuff, I noticed makes all the difference in that leadership role, because people really hang on your word that you say.
So I don't know how closely you've been watching. Sounds like fairly closely the last couple of years since you've been out of the building. Is there a particular vote that you'd point to? Of course, obviously, Anna Williams and you are different parties and you're different people. But was there a vote that you would point to where you would say, "Gee, if I'd still held that seat, I would have voted differently, and it would have been different for the people in my district"?
You know, I have to give you a very frank answer. I followed it, but I couldn't say I'd vote differently on this one or that one because I just kind of watched the periphery. I didn't get in the nuts and bolts of it and really get into OLIS and watch what was going on.
Yeah, yeah.
You following the Multnomah County Sheriff's race at all?
I mean, who's going to replace Sheriff Reese?
Yeah.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
You have an opinion on that?
I don't know either one of them very well. I knew, I think it's Nicole O'Donnell. Yeah. I worked with her husband, but I met Nicole kind of briefly through the halls being introduced to her when I was with the sheriff's office. So I don't have that much of attention paying to that just because I'm worried about out here in Hood River and in the Dalles.
Sure. This is not a question that like we're going to decide on you based on your answer to this question. I'm just curious. Yeah. We're trying to get information and wisdom on how to endorse in that race.
If you look at, I think from what I understand and kind of talking with people is if you look at what Nicole has done and where Sheriff Reese has made decisions based upon performance, and she has become the undersheriff and she's had the opportunity to go to different places because she was in the jail when I was in charge of the jail when I was there. And then I left and I think she came into the chief deputy spot, which is assigned to patrol. Now I think she's the undersheriff now, if I remember right. Yeah. If I was a betting person, I would say she would be the person I would talk to and really lean on and ask questions about. But I know her husband. So there's that waiver I got, or not that waiver, that kind of what I'm trying to figure out what I'm looking for.
The caveat.
The caveat to it, yeah.
So what's the issue that's really burning with people you talk to in your district that might be different from the big issue in Portland or the big issue in Salem or Harney County?
Well, we're seeing uptick in crime in Hood River, and they likely relate that to the homeless transient issue that's moving in. The Dallas sees it too. They see the uptick in kind of I was talking to somebody that was at owned a motor dealer or a car dealership. So this guy would come in, rant and rave, and he'd call and help one of the people to try to get him. It's their version of the mental health crisis unit, but the police aren't part of it. It's just, I can't remember the name of the outreach. Called him and like, oh, it's 11 o'clock. It's Friday. I don't know if we're going to be able to come out and help you. But if he's still on there Monday, give us a call. And it's that outreach. It's what it was. Like, hey, we're going to lunch and I don't know if we're going to be back after lunch. So we'll give us a call on Monday if he's still around. And this guy's acting goofy and there's not enough bed space. Well, not enough bed space because they don't have enough people to work. And so it helped that way. And so I think mental health is one of them. You see that, the homeless issue, crime, the school stuff is a big one. You know, what people are getting taught in school, what the kids are, and what parents want to what parents want to tell their kids about stuff. And that delineation is a big one. And, you know, an example, well, I guess, never mind, we'll keep asking questions. I was going to give you an example of something, but it's not part of it.
Yeah. Well, what's your example?
So my wife was a chaperone for the little girls in May Street Elementary School, chaperoned them to the Hood River swimming pool. And so she's getting all the little girls in there, getting them ready to go swimming and stuff. And then she sees somebody walk by, and out of the corner of her eye, she saw what she believed was a male with male parts, outdoor plumbing that was still there, and went into the shower. And a little girl went to my wife's like, why is there a daddy in the girls' locker room showering? And my wife was mortified why somebody identified as a female, but was still a male. And she went up to the front desk and he's like, well, we're supposed to do that. It's all right. The males can be in the bathroom if that's how they identify. He's like, these are high school kids that didn't understand, like, you have little girls in here that's impacting. And why is that guy in here taking a shower? And so she made some phone calls and was a mama bear and basically got the swim pool to create a family locker room. So if kids wanted to go in there and change with parents, they could go do that. And so that's kind of one of the issues you see going on. It's like, to me, it's wrong to see that happen in something like that.
Great. We're just about out of time. We have one question that we're asking all candidates this time, and that's, has there been a moment for you where you sort of felt like, hey, the pandemic is not over, but it feels like it's over? Like, you know, some of our candidates have said, oh, I went to a concert at Les Schwab, or went to a Blazers game with no mask on. What has that moment of joy at feeling like the pandemic was over come up
I
for
think when we
you?
could walk through a grocery store without your mask on, or if you didn't have one on, somebody else had one on, it was good. But my wife and I, we both ended up with COVID and I had it pretty bad, but it's real, but we're kind of back to normal, and you don't hear much talk on the news about it either. So I think when
Yeah.
we're just able to get out free and our kids don't have to worry about putting masks on, that's kind of was like that. Oh, it feels natural again. We went into Portland and didn't have to wear a mask. And that was kind of the big one. We went
Yeah.
doing some
And-
shopping.
Forgot to ask your age at the outset.
My age?
Your age, just, everybody's age.
Oh,
fact.
54. Just
Okay.
turned 54.
Great. Happy birthday. Thanks for taking the time. It's good
All
to
right,
see you.
thanks, guys. All right, take care.
Thank you.
Bye.